I can't handle Wetzel on video. I just bombed that whole read there.
Does Dan make you nervous?
Seeing one of my favorites of all time staring at me on the big screen.
Yeah, imagine Neurology Centers of Alabama how they felt about that.
They paid for that.
Yeah, Dan Wetzel is with us now, national columnist, Yahoo Sports. We love having Dan on the show, always good with his time. He lives not too far from America's team, the Michigan Wolverines. How are you today, Dan?
Well, my devastatingly handsome looks does intimidate a lot of people. So, no shame in that.
Imagine that on 70 inches of high definition staring at me.
I'm sorry. You guys wanted the Zoom.
Hey,
wasn't my idea.
So Jim Harbaugh says everybody's pulling for America's team.
Sure.
Here's where I stand on this, Dan. I think if he's on the sidelines for Ohio State, I think America's like, this guy cheated. We're pulling for Ohio State. And I think if he is not on the sidelines, people are like, this dude was done wrong. There was no due process. We're pulling for this Michigan team. So I think there's some right in what he's saying, but there was no reason for him to say it.
Well, this is Jim Harbaugh now. He says a lot of things. He just recently recanted his previous opinion that quarterbacks shouldn't eat chicken because a chicken is a nervous bird and it would make you nervous. So that was his previous stance on diet for quarterbacks. But then he got some chickens as himself and he raises them and he found them to be highly productive in their egg production. So now he believes that they should eat chicken. So this is the deep thinker that we're dealing with. And, look, geniuses are often not recognized until after they're gone. So maybe Jim is on this, but he says a lot of things. Yeah, I tend to agree. If I'm Michigan, I'm kind of like, the penalty, we'll take it. Like it actually shifts the narrative a little bit. And the thing about this penalty, which is weird, is that he's still allowed to coach all week.
Yes.
He's Harbaugh is not, he doesn't call the plays on Saturday. Sharon Moore does, the acting head coach. Obviously it adds some stress to Sharon's deal, but like Harbaugh's about fundamentals and practice and game plans. And, if you watch Michigan, they're not they very well. I don't know if they could beat Georgia or anything, but they don't beat themselves. They haven't had a turnover in over 2 months. They ran the ball 32 consecutive times against Penn State. So they just lined up for 2.5 quarters and said, "Stop us, I dare you," and they couldn't stop them.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of tricks. This isn't Lane Kiffin getting pulled or Lincoln Riley getting pulled on game day. So I'm kind of with you. I don't know that the penalty is that harsh for Michigan, and I don't know that it's not better public relation wise if you're just sitting.
Now, obviously, and I'd love your thoughts on this, if they just took this 3-game suspension of Harbaugh, would that be it from the Big Ten? The Big Ten would hand down nothing else on this and leave it up to the NCAA at that point? Or is the Big Ten leaving the door open to come back and stick the team with something else later on?
Well, the Big Ten has left that door open in their letter. So I guess the Big Ten could come back and hit them harder on the sportsmanship policy. But generally speaking, this would go to the NCAA. And I think that's part of the issue. But you're going to have to get Jim Harbaugh to admit he did anything wrong. And while, this is kind of where it gets, don't kill the messenger here, right? It's clear Michigan, the program had someone breaking the rules, right? Connor Stallions. In Jim Harbaugh's mind, it's like he's probably the wronged one here. Like a guy on his staff went out and did this. He didn't know anything about it. They haven't found any of his staff knew about it. This guy was trying to prop himself up as this genius to improve his career chances, and he kind of screwed everybody over. Now, that's their kind of take. Regardless, they probably benefited somehow from this. So there's a lot of buckets here. You can agree with one bucket and not like Harbaugh will make a point and you're like, yeah, but, and it's a lot of yeah, buts in this whole scandal. So I don't think Harbaugh is willing to accept anything. And that's why I'd rather just go to court on Friday and argue there, which we're, as a media vulture, I am hoping and begging that Harbaugh himself somehow winds up on a witness stand because that I don't care what happens in this case. I don't care the resolution. Give me Harbaugh on a witness stand.
Will it be open to the media? Are you able to go to the
yeah,
proceedings?
it's
So
public.
you'll be there?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This is the public's work. I mean, this is a very important legal case. Listen, I covered in the Southern District of New York, probably other than the Supreme Court, the most famous and powerful courtroom in the whole country. I covered twice a hearing on whether Tom Brady deflated the footballs, and the debate came down to essentially, is Tom Brady good at football or did he rig the games? We're literally arguing whether Tom Brady's good at football. It's like, yeah, I don't think that 1% pound per pressure, I was like, there was like 40 lawyers in there and Tom Brady. Like it was insane. I was like, football is just an amazing sport that we are actually
It really
doing.
is. He is Dan Wetzel, national columnist, Yahoo Sports, at Dan Wetzel on Twitter. You see, if you're watching us, over Dan's right shoulder, the Epic Athletes book, Steph Curry. It's a great gift for that young reader in your family this holiday season. You can get it wherever you buy your books. Go to Dan's Twitter handle, and he's got links there at Dan Wetzel on Twitter. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Tony Bennetts is very early in this job, and I don't know what kind of power he actually has that he has earned from this job. But basically, it looked like, Dan, and tell me if I am crazy here, it looked like his choices were side with the 13 other schools and go against one of the most powerful schools, or side with one of the two most powerful schools and go against the other 13. He didn't have a lot of good choices here, it didn't appear.
The choices needed to be made prior in how this was originally approached. And again, I think there's a different buckets. You can think, hey, Harbaugh should have gotten a harder suspension, a tougher suspension, right? 3 weeks, no working with the team, and still see some concerns of how the Big Ten handled it and the NCAA. He needed to have the experience or the perspective to say, all right, let's calm down here, everyone. There's an allegation of some sign. They stepped over the line here to sign steal. We don't need to go a nuclear option. I'll put it this way. If this happened, let's say with Alabama, would Greg Sankey hold a conference call with the other 13 coaches in the SEC where they are all free to trash Nick Saban?
Nope.
Zero chance.
No,
No
not
chance.
a chance. Not a chance. Nope.
No chance. So one of the reasons, if you read the Big Ten's thing, there's parts of it that are very good. There's parts of it that are really wobbly. And like one of the reasons Bennetts said he had to act was because when this was originally presented to the NCAA by some outside investigative body, like someone hired a PI to find this out, Charlie Baker himself, the NCAA president, called Bennetts and was like, this is going on. And Bennetts and the Big Ten said, well, the NCAA president never gets involved in these things. That's why it's so important. Well, is that because it's so important that the NCAA broke protocol, or because Charlie Baker's is a politician who's been on the job for 7 months and didn't know what the protocol was, right? Like, yes, the NCAA president doesn't get involved in these because it's not a good idea for the NCAA president to get involved in this. So it's like, which one is it? Bennetts argues that we have to do this because if you steal signs, if you know the sign of a play coming, it is a player safety impact. More players will get injured if you know the sign. So if you know they're running right and I tackle you, there's a higher chance of injury. This makes no sense because everybody steals the signs legally. It's not against the rules to steal signs. Teams share signs. So he just gave plaintiff lawyers for injuries a gold mine. The Big Ten president or commissioner, one of the two most powerful people or three most powerful people in all of college athletics, just said, if they know your signs, your players are at greater risk. And yet the NCAA doesn't outlaw sign stealing and won't put the money for a headset into the things. That is something that every school in the country is going to have to deal with. And this is, you don't even have to go to law school to say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you be, if it's such a big deal that players are getting injured, which there's no actual stats on or data on, why would you allow sign stealing to begin with? And so there's a lot of stuff in here where you go, geez, he got himself into a box once he took that call and he made it about everybody. There were out routes that he didn't take them. So I think you can be very critical of wherever you fall on what the punishment should be. The precedent, the procedures here are like, ooh, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, and there's some wild theories out there, one of which Michigan shared information with other teams late last year, including possibly South Carolina against Tennessee. I don't know how much validity is there. Is this something that people are still digging on? And do you believe there's something there when you talk about – I mean, when you watch that game play out, it did seem a little weird the way South Carolina played.
And have you noticed the SEC waving their arms and suspending people?
No.
I don't know. Did they? Maybe not. If they did South Carolina have any reason to suspect? I mean, again, where we're down to here is how – if you get to the legalese of this, and we're going to court, so I don't want to bore people, but this is about define what an in-person scout is. Define an in-person scout, because the rule is very vague. It's like 5 words long. You can't in-person scout. Okay. I would posit that Connor Stallions' friends with an iPhone video in a stands is an in-person scout. They don't work for Michigan, and he's not in charge of Michigan, but that's an in-person scout in my opinion. Is it also an in-person scout if Ohio State plays Michigan and then gives all the signs that they've acquired through their scouting and in-person game to Purdue in the Big Ten championship? Is that an in-person scout? Is a coach in the press box with binoculars breaking it down an in-person scout, or is it just a guy in the stands with his iPhone? Is there a degree to that? Is 175%? What are all these things that need to be kind of litigated out? So did South Carolina benefit from in-person scouting? Yes, but would they have any reason to think that Michigan sharing the signs would have acquired those illegally? I don't think that would. I don't know why Shane Beamer or something would be like, well, that's if he even knew that the sign stealing is often and sharing is often at lower levels. Like, why would you assume Connor Stallions, right? It's such a crackpot concept this guy came up with. It stunned everybody because it's like, I can't believe someone tried this, but sure enough, he did. So there's a lot of like angles here that become very, very complicated on a very what's basic situation. And that's what you wade into when you try to punish, particularly by taking guys off the field and taking a coach away from a team. You walk into a hornet's nest of, I don't know the definition of it. I could certainly go either way on that. What's an in-person scout? But this has never been decided because this rule has been enforced once since 1994. A Baylor basketball coach, 15 years ago, showed up at a game once that he shouldn't have been at, and he was suspended for a half. That's the only, we know what, hey, you give a guy a car, this is what you get if you do this. We don't really know what the punishments here should be or have been, or what is even going on, or what's the definition of an in-person scout.
All right, Friday, Washtenaw County Courtroom, 9 a.m. Eastern is where Dan will be for this hearing, which in standard college football fashion will be presided over by Judge Timothy P. Connors, Michigan alum and Michigan lecturer. That is the most college football thing ever, Dan. It's going to be presided over by a Michigan man.
They got a good law school. I mean, of course. Can you imagine if it was Spartan or something like that?
Oh,
hey,
I know.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's a lecturer. Imagine his rate my professor rating after the rules.
I mean, at least even in the SEC, we don't let former Alabama quarterback David Smith referee Alabama games.
I mean, let me just tell you, the SEC is so lame now. The Big Ten is where all the fun is. You guys got to get your crazy up. You guys got to get your. I know you're firing 2 coaches already. Yeah. That's a good start. But I am really disappointed in the SEC right now. It does not just mean more. It does not. This means more. This means more.
Oh, it's coming in 2024. Texas is coming to the league. Crazy's on its way, and it's wearing burnt orange.
Bring in a couple more cousins. Yeah.
Dan is on Twitter at Dan Wetzel, national columnist, Yahoo Sports. You can get his Epic Athletes link right there on his Twitter feed. Great gift for that young reader in your life this holiday season. Dan, thank you very much for the time. Enjoy the courtroom.
Always fun, guys. Take care.